What does it mean to exist? Is there some type of prerequisite to just being? I feel like it's often addressed in life that people don't really take the time to live. So the question is, what does it mean to exist? What are the steps that we need to take in order to be sure that what we're doing right now is contributing to who we are on the most minute level? I feel like to exist and to live are somewhat starkly different things, because a lot of people exist without living. But what does it mean to live? Is it just to take up space? Is there anything or any requirement that we need to fulfill in order to be us? Now, in order to somewhat address this, I feel like we have to take into account what it means to be ourselves. And I feel like a lot of times in society, to be yourself is to fit in or to be comfortable with your place in society. Now, I think that how you exist is a fluid thing. It's not necessarily a right or wrong thing or right or wrong way to exist. But I feel like there is a certain character trait or character attributes that would allow you to exist better. A lot of us are somewhat trapped in some type of reality where we're constantly trying to appease others or seeking their validation or trying to look for the parts of ourselves that would allow us to interact with others on a deeper or more grand level. So the prerequisite would have to just be to have a self. In order to exist, you have to have some type of self, right? I feel like a lot of people who are suffering with their own identity sometimes feel as if they don't exist. And it goes beyond whether or not they feel like they live. It's deeper. And I feel like that question of existence, that question of reality is a somewhat trademark of a lot of people who try to commit themselves to any type of deep introspection or improvement. And that's not to say it's always a negative thing. There are two sides of this coin, and there are those who feel like, oh, I don't exist, and they're happy, and or those who are like, oh, maybe I don't exist, and they're distraught. But I think any type of implication has to be drawn from our association with ourselves. I think that it's the ego that's going to determine whether or not you care. And your true self who's going to be like, oh, well, you're here. I've always thought in the back of my head whenever things happen or whenever I wanted to do something and maybe I was too lazy. I'm like, you're taking up space. You might as well use it. And I just think that that's the most basic thing you can tell yourself in order to keep yourself moving. We do take up space. That's the most fundamental thing we do. And to exist, I guess, is to be tapped in with a world of infinite possibility. I feel like existence should not be restricted. That's something that's only characteristic of life. To exist in this way is to allow yourself to somewhat be, stop placing these limitations on yourself and allow your true self or whoever you are behind the mask you put up for the rest of society. Allowing that to sometimes shine through or allowing yourself to just be that something. Don't get caught up in everything that we're taught to restrict ourselves. And maybe take a little time to introspect upon yourself rather than to, you know, just go on social media and hear somebody talk about certain issues and just think that you're automatically changed just because you listen to that information. I feel like learning the information is one thing, but putting it into action and turning it into wisdom is another. It's one thing to say we're something, that's one thing to do, you know? So the overall point is going to be to do as much as you can to ground yourself in reality, but not in a societal reality, in a reality that you're okay with. It's kind of like the law of assumption. We are either living in our own personal heaven or hell. I believe that kind of thing starts now. And I feel like those who are unable to find peace within themselves or unable to, relinquish some of the things that are holding them back are going to be the ones in that personal hell. In that state where everything seems to be negative or everything seems to be going against us or not in our favor or not for us or not towards us. Now, to live in your own personal heaven, on the other hand, is to somewhat relinquish all the things that hold you back. But not in the way like you don't care, but in the way that it's not going to impact you. It's something that would allow you to exist in this world peacefully and on your own terms. It doesn't mean that you won't endure hardships or you won't find circumstances that, prove to shake your character. It just means that who you are fundamentally is going to be on a different wavelength than those around you. It's going to instantiate that the way you are now is a result of what you've built rather than how society has formed you. That's to live in your own personal heaven, and that's what it means to exist. To take up space and like the space that you take up. I feel like liking it is just as important as taking it up. Because who's going to truly be able to express themselves or to enjoy themselves if they don't even like themselves? So I guess the first step is to figure out who you are. If you don't like it, take the steps in order to change it into something you like. Be both the sculptor and the sculpture at the same time. Hope to never be finished, yet hope to create something beautiful in the process. I feel like the journey's never over. We should always be striving to make ourselves better or to improve or to, find more and more reasons to appreciate who we are. That's what I feel like a lot of us lacked, and it's gratitude. I feel like even the question of what does it mean to exist is somewhat a contradiction. It's somewhat instantiating that you don't appreciate some of this. And I feel like any type of, practice gratitude would allow you to somewhat mitigate some of the questions that you might ask yourself in regards to how you live your life. I feel like a lot of the stress we place on ourselves is because we don't appreciate ourselves or have faith in ourselves or have gratitude for what we've achieved so far or what, we've allowed ourselves to get. So the point is to be more grateful, and not just like grateful in the sense that like, oh, thank you for this, thank you for that, but the feeling. I feel like the feeling of gratitude is much more important than just saying, expressing. And I feel like once you express or feel that gratitude more and more, the more things you will find to be grateful for. And I think the same thing works for looking for positive and feeling good and feeling happy. The more you allow yourself to, be overcome with joy from the small mundane things that might cause it, the more and more you'll find things to be happy over. I feel like there's no real difference between happy and sad people other than, unless it's clinical, other than the perspective at which they take on the world. Like, whether or not you'll try to see the good first or whether or not you'll try to see the negative aspects, or whether or not you're going to be able to somewhat shift that mindset. And I think that ultimately is up to how you've allowed your environment to impact you, or whether or not you have built your foundation regardless of the environment at which you were in.